I always love talking about the really technical side of filmmaking. I love watching special features and seeing exactly how they did everything. And even if it's just CGI, there are still always a huge number of ways to approach something. It's not just, animators or technicians that, wave their magic wands and just make it CGI. Like, it really is an art. No matter what it is, there's always a number of ways it could be done. And so this new report, now we're talking about how are the Dufflepuds going to be achieved. There's a new report, if you can go to Narnia Web and see it. Basically, there's an actor's resume, and on it appears something about a green screen test, for Voyage of the Dawn Treader for the Dufflepuds. And this clearly implies that they're experimenting with what I'm going to henceforth refer to as the Tumnus method. Basically, half CG, half real, is what they seem to be doing. If they're doing a green screen test, well, if they were doing it 100% computer-generated character, there obviously wouldn't be any need for a green screen. So my guess is they're experimenting with having the actor wear green pants against a green screen, which, as far as the computer is concerned, would make his legs the same part of the background, and that would just, they could take him out really easily. And then just taking the top half, which would be in costume, and then fitting that onto a CG leg and having that hop around, and that would be really difficult to track. But that's what I'm guessing they're trying to do here. For some reason, most people seem to be interpreting it as they're going to have a 100% CG character. It's going to be, the Dufflepuds will be completely CGI. And I cannot for the life of me understand where that comes from. It's very clear from this report, if they're hiring an actor to do a green screen test, that obviously doesn't mean they're doing a 100% computer-generated character. It means they want to try to use a green screen if you want to cut something into a picture. It's not if you want to do it completely CGI. What use would there be for it? So this doesn't mean that this is how they're going to do it, but right now they're experimenting with doing it that way. They may decide, okay, this isn't going to work, and end up doing it, completely CGI. But right now they're experimenting with the same way they did Tumnus. I would imagine this be the upper half, a real actor in costume, and the lower half would be a CG leg. But it's definitely, I've been thinking about this for a while. It's definitely got me thinking even more about how they're going to do the Dufflepuds. And initially, remember, my thought was always, well, they're going to have to be totally CGI. But they don't have to be. This method that I think they're talking about right here, it would be extremely difficult to track. I'm going to just assume they might not be. This might not be the case. But I'm just going to assume for now that the Dufflepuds are pretty much going to behave the same way they do in the book, with really jumping around and all that stuff. And if they do, it would be much more complex. I think they would be a lot more complex to create than Tumnus. Tumnus was a relatively stable character in that he was just kind of walking around. He didn't do anything all that complex. But if you got characters like jumping around and flipping around in the book, they even rowing on the water, using their paddles. Or using their feet as, like boats. I always love that moment in the book. I hope they get that in there somehow, even if it's just for a moment. But that'd be really difficult to track, because how do you fit the top half, onto a CG leg so precisely that they can flip around and troll around and it still fits? It's not. You would have to have, when you're filming the green screen element, they would have to have the camera spinning around, or have the person spinning around. It's hard to imagine. It's hard for me to imagine exactly how that could look good. With Tumnus, where he's just walking around, it's still a complex process, but relatively straightforward at the same time. If they can figure out a good way to do the Dufflepuds that way, that would be, no pun intended, that would be a big leap for visual effects. And I think we'll all agree that if they can find a way, everyone has differing opinions on the best way to do it, and there's a poll on Narnia Web right now where you can vote, just on the homepage, bottom right corner, where you can vote on what you think the best way to do it is. But I think we'll all agree that if they can, and this is true for just about anything, if they can find a way to do it for real, without the use of any CGI at all, that's ideal. If they can find a way to make it totally believable, and then doing it totally for real is always the best way to go. What we all disagree on is, what is it possible? Can you make a completely real Dufflepud without using CGI and still make it believable? Most of us are willing to concede that yes, you're gonna have to use CGI, but the big disagreement is, does it have to be totally CGI or just half CGI? Would it look good to do half CGI? It's all technical. It all depends on what's going to be the result of their tests. I can't say for sure. It's just what they're going to do their tests and whatever looks better. I will say that kind of my thought leading up to Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe, I remember saying this a lot because we knew that Andrew Adamson directed Shrek, and he was really experienced with visual effects and stuff. And there was definitely some concern that there would be over, too much CGI. I remember saying a few times, after living with BBC, the BBC versions for this long, and an Narnia movie with too much CGI would kind of be a relief. Look at the Dufflepuds in the BBC version, and it's just ridiculous. I just hang my head in shame every time I've seen that. I'm not a fan of the BBC versions at all, by the way. And the Dufflepuds are probably a good example of one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of them. It just looks so incredibly absurd. So it's obvious they're going to have to use some amount of CGI. And again, if they can avoid using CGI, that's the best way to do it. But if they can't, I can also see a totally CG character working. And also, like I said before, this would be more complex to do than Tumnus, but also at the same time, assuming they follow the book, the Dufflepuds are going to be in fewer shots than Tumnus. It would be a relatively few amount of shots they would have to do, whereas Tumnus, he had a lot more to do, and he had to, interact with Lucy and everything. And so there's a lot of different ways you could go with it. And I'm sure for the next movie, I'll have a lot of fun talking about how to do Puddle Glum, because that's also a really, it could be CGI, but you definitely could do it real. If you're willing to make some compromises from the description in the book, you could do it half CG. How do you do this? There's just a lot of different ways you could go with it, and I love picking it apart. Right now, again, I would like them to do the same way they did Tumnus. I'm just not sure if that's possible or not, so we'll see what happens. Aside from that, there's some storyboards. I don't think we're 100% certain that they're all completely legitimate, but some storyboards from Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And I think storyboards are actually a lot more valuable as far as being the detective. Storyboards are a lot more valuable to us than concept art, because concept art does not necessarily depict scenes from the film. A storyboard does. This is like shots they're actually going to shoot. And there's not much to talk about here, I think. There's one really cool low-angle shot where they're swimming up to the water. If they're following the book, I would presume that's one of the first scenes where, Eustace, Edmund, and Lucy are, maybe they fall into the water and they're underwater for a while, and they swim back up. That's what I would imagine. Then there's another one that appears to be a hand holding Reepicheep, and the action arrow indicates that he's about to flip up onto the arm. And I would presume this is the scene where Eustace swings him around by his tail. I really hope they have that scene in the movie. That'd be cool. It's such a great, just such a great moment for Reepicheep to talk about something that he thinks is so obvious. Like, obviously you have respect for a mouse's tail, and Eustace totally doesn't get it, obviously. I think it's sort of great to start the antagonism between those characters. Here's a case where, using that word antagonism again. That was a big word leading up to Prince Caspian about adding antagonism between all the characters. And for the most part, it wasn't really appropriate, I felt, in Prince Caspian, whereas this one, it is, to see that transformation of Eustace. So that's kind of all that's going on right now. There's also the logo for Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which everyone's all freaking out about because it's kind of all we got, but nothing interesting to say about it. It looks just like the other ones. I guess it's worth noting that, we changed studios. We went from Disney to Fox, and yet the logo is the same. I know there was some questions about, are they going to get to keep the same logo? So that's kind of interesting. They're not trying to totally do something completely different. They're trying to keep some continuity, which may be good, which may be bad, I'm not necessarily I'm only in favor of continuity so far as let's have continuity with the good stuff, but not have continuity with the bad stuff. If it's bad, throw it out. And the logo's fine, so I'm cool with it. But it's a great sort of, they really are making this movie kind of moment, realization. They really are going to make this book into a movie. But according to the countdown clock on Narnia Web, it's 532 days until Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Got a logo, storyboards, some tech talk to kind of keep us occupied until shooting starts next month. So should have some really exciting stuff pretty soon. Maybe some casting announcements in the next few weeks.